Hello, hello. Leslie M. Thornton, Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss. Today, I am joined by Zander Fryer. Zander is a very special person in my life and has been for a couple years now. He is my business coach, and I would add on top of that life coach as well. He's a life coach in disguise on top of business, but he's very good at business, and he's the CEO and founder of High Impact Coaching. And yeah, just super grateful that you're here and excited to dive in and chat with you. Thanks for being here, Zander.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Leslie. I'm excited.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today. And I'm excited for the timing of this and just all the things. And I think you're the perfect person to talk to. So just on Monday, I was leading my mastermind group, the Warrior Goddess Masterminds, and was sharing about how I just made this very large investment to hire a matchmaker, which you were there. You coached me the day that I made that decision, a little bit on that. We muscle tested and whatever, had a nice chat about that. And what's been interesting.
Yeah, I bet you weren't expecting that coaching from your business coach.
Exactly. That's what I mean. You got to have a life coach, Xander's like the spiritual minister at the same time, like made out of love. I'm pretty sure co-wrote a book with Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup for the Soul, used to be in the Air Force, like jumped the ranks, and like when he was like, I don't know, how old are you? 24 or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Don't even know. Anyway, so many cool things. We're around the same age, and it's just like, all right, we're going to follow that man all the way as far as we can go and just make it happen. So
we've got a lot to go. So
we've got a lot to go. Yeah. And when I came to you, my business was, I don't know, it was working, but it was not official at all. I remember saying to you, like on our first coaching call, like, I want to have a team of people. And then you started asking me my numbers and whatever. And you're like, okay, well, in order to have a team, you need to have a business. It's like, all right, touche. So it took me a year to be able to get to the point of having a team. But anyway, everything that you taught me got me to that point, and we'll keep going. Impact. That's the goal.
I love it.
So yes, realizing that after I made this big investment, and Zander, in a moment, I'm going to ask you about how you made, I remember when you left your corporate job, you went and got into a lot of debts and, worked your way out of it and all of that kind of stuff. And realizing from doing this, even though it's for a matchmaker and it's for a future relationship, it actually being the transformation for me being to get out of the money trap, if you will. And part of that money trap has been trusting myself that I can take care of myself, that I'm resourceful, that I'll always make it happen regardless of what my bank account says. I was just interviewing Zach White and talking about how, we do hypnosis for permanent weight loss, and, realizing in the past, before I got past it, was like when the scale was up, like my mood and my, happiness level.
You were tied to that. Yeah.
Totally tied. Like my worth is attached to my weight, weight is down. All right. Like where are the parties? Let's socialize. I'm going to wear my favorite outfit, but if my weight is up, like I'm hiding out on the couch. Right. So it's like, got past that. My weight is no longer my worth. And just this past summer, I was at my NLP trainers training, and I said to one of my colleagues, I was like, I know the next thing for me is to get my worth not attached to my bank account.
Yeah.
Right. Because we did really well last year. And so like the bank account went way up, and it's like, oh, here's the happiness. And then as, life and everything keeps happening, we're making different investments, it goes down. And it's like, oh, I want to be sitting on the couch. So like, ready to be free of that.
Yeah.
And as I've been having this conversation, and it's attached also with a future husband or man, because it's like, there's that energetic of like, hey, I need you to be that for me because I can't do that for myself. So anyways, this whole whirlwind of things that I know is happening, not only for me, but for all my clients. And the conversation that we had was extremely rich on Monday because of my sharing all these things. And so you're the perfect person to talk to this about, in my opinion. So my first
we're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about food. We're going to dig into all the fun stuff.
Exactly. And the last thing about the food, because what we were talking about, obviously all my clients, the mastermind comes from the hypnosis for permanent weight loss, is like, it all matters, right? The same way, like in business, you're the life coach as well. It's like with food, if you have financial stress, right? For emotional eating, if you have relationship stress, if you have blah, 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 right? This is all going to affect the way that we're eating and ultimately our long-term health as well. So all tied in. And yeah, so you worked in corporate. I remember you saying you got into $30,000 of debt, which before I made this investment, I was like, oh, that would make me uncomfortable. And now I just did more than that. And I'm like, okay, but it's accelerating me to like the next dimension.
Now, the real question is, could you imagine doing that when you didn't have an income? Right. So that was,
oh my God, you're right.
That's the difference, right? Like you have a healthy business, you're making money, you have income.
Yes.
I did it right after I quit my job. I had, not only did I make that investment, but I literally had nothing coming in.
Okay. So we need to hear about that. So how did you have the cojones to do that? Like, what is that? How can we get that?
It's so, I'll talk a little bit about money and specifically around that, but just kind of like you mentioned, all these things are very, very interrelated in terms of how they work in our brain, in our psychology. And obviously you're a master at NLP. You understand these things, you understand how to program the brain. And I always tell people, whether it's love or health or money or impact or whatever relationships, whatever it might be, right? It all comes back to our subconscious programming. So you've heard me say this for the last 2 years, but for anybody who hasn't heard me say it, most people are highly unaware, and your audience is probably very aware, but most people are highly unaware that 95% of our brain is our subconscious mind. Right. And so only 5% of our brain is our conscious mind. So that conscious thinking, this is what I want, here's where I want to go. We always tell people, like, could you imagine you have all these goals? You have a money goal, you have a relationship goal, you have a weight goal, you have all these different goals that you want to achieve. It's like having 5 horses, like thoroughbred horses. Maybe they're like the strongest horses in the world, but they're running towards your goals, your relationship goals, your money goals, your health goals, all these things. And those 5 horses are chained to 95 donkeys that are walking the other direction. Or even just sitting down. They don't even have to be doing anything, because that 95% of your brain is like a supercomputer that's been programmed by society, by culture, by your parents growing up, by school, by majority of people that don't have your goals in mind. The goal of society is to keep everybody together. And that's herd, right? This is evolutionary programming from human nature. To keep everybody together is to keep everybody alive, right? But if you want something different, you have to go against herd mentality most of the time. And so that 95% of your brain is actually going to fight you on this. So most people never achieve their goals because they were never given a user's manual on how to program your brain, right? You're giving a user's manual for your new remote control for your TV or your new phone that you just got, or your microwave or your toaster oven, but you weren't given a user's manual for how to operate your brain, right? How to understand it, how to program it, how to understand your emotions, your thoughts, your beliefs, right? Yes. And, a lot of people are aware enough, they say, oh, I have a bad money mindset, or, it's my emotional attachment to food. Well, that emotional attachment is a subconscious programming, right? It's an unconscious way of behaving. Something happens, it creates a thought or an emotion in the brain, which triggers you to act or behave a certain way. And you feel like you can't control it, right? And you think you're broken because you see other people controlling it and fixing this problem. And you're like, why can't I do what this person does? That's because the 95 donkeys in your brain are programmed to walk the other direction, and you have not learned how to properly program them to walk with you towards your goals. And that's why obviously what you do is so incredibly powerful. So going back to the money thing, I think I have to give a lot of the credit to my mom, because I think I was raised with a very, very good money mindset. A lot of people were not raised with proper money mindsets, whether it might be money doesn't grow on trees, or you always have to work hard for money. Like, money can come easily to you. Most people don't realize that money can come easily. We're all deserving of more money. So money is tough to find. It doesn't grow on trees. Maybe you have parents that are like, you have to store and save every penny of it, just like you were talking about. And so you start to create a worthiness attachment to that money.
Yes.
But none of these are necessarily healthy money habits. And when I was, when I was brought up, I do have to give a lot of credit to my mom. My mom was never afraid of money. She knew that money was a good thing. She made a decent income. I didn't come from a very well-off family. It was a one-income household, and I was definitely like on the lower end income of all my friends, but I wasn't without money. And I wasn't in dire need or scarcity. So I learned a couple of things. I learned that you can make money in different ways. And I learned obviously hard work can make you money, but I also learned that smart work can make you money. And I learned how to leverage my skills to make more money. And I learned if I were to do skills that were more valuable to other people, then I would get more money. I also learned, the other thing that I learned is that money flows, just like you mentioned. Money is energy. Right. And so one of the things that a lot of people do when they have an unhealthy relationship with money is they want to store it. They want to hoard it, right? Because they think that there's a shortage of money. Well, I don't know if anybody noticed, but the US government just this last 12 to 16 months printed over 40% of the currency currently in population. 40%.
Wow.
So if you're thinking that money doesn't grow on trees, you're right. It doesn't grow on trees, but the US government can print half of the money in literally a year. So there is actually an endless supply of money. It's just a question of where is the money going, who's it going to, and what's it being used for. The other thing around that is, I always tell people, if you took a hose, money is meant to flow. It's just energy. If you took a hose and you clogged up one side of the hose, can you get any water in from the other side? No, you have to open it up. You have to flow. So if you want to bring more money in, you have to be willing to put money out. Now, the real problem is that people have made mistakes with their spending in the past. They haven't spent on the right things. They've spent on, I call it the difference between spending and investing, right? So do you put money towards things that, the idea of an investment is something that has the ability to grow and appreciate with time, right? For example, learning. Right. So when I first quit my job, I spent something about, I think it was something around $45,000. Now, half of that was, money I had. And half of that, like you mentioned, was money I didn't. But I didn't view it as a sunk cost. I viewed it as an investment because I knew that essentially what I was buying back was time. Now, time is the one resource you can't actually get more of. So any amount of time that I could buy back, I was going to be willing to do. When I quit my 9 to 5, I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that the one resource that I couldn't get back was my time. And I was willing to spend any amount of money to shorten that process, hire this coach, hire that mentor, buy into this mastermind, buy into this program, learn absolutely everything to shorten that learning curve so that I could start to make more money doing what I loved and what actually mattered to me. And because of that, I had this financial hose that I was spending out of one side, but in the other side, eventually within about 3-4 months, more money kept coming in than what I was spending outside the other side. But it was because I was willing to spend and invest that I was able to start bringing in more money. Now, the reason that I think so many people have issues with this is because, first of all, they put themselves in bad debt, right? So maybe they put themselves in debt into things that don't appreciate. Buying a bunch of shoes, buying a new car that's out of your price range that you don't necessarily need, right? And I drive a very nice car right now, but up until about a year ago, I drove a Mini Cooper, right? Because I didn't need, that car made me so happy. It's not even funny, right? But it didn't have to, it doesn't have to cost a ton to have a nice car. Investing in things that put you into debt in a bad way, they don't appreciate, they don't make you a bigger person. They don't make you a better person, right? When you and I were talking about investing in, a relationship, basically, right? It's like, well, that's all you really want. You just want, you're going to be on an amazing roller coaster for these next however many years and decades. Like, I just want somebody to ride the roller coaster with me. Like, this roller coaster is not that fun without somebody. Right. And it's like, yeah, like what we were just talking about, time, right? How much of this roller coaster would you prefer to ride with an amazing partner? And how much of it do you want to ride alone? You're like, I don't want to ride anymore alone. So it's like, are you willing to spend the money on this? Of course. Right. Because I can never get that time back. And then the other issue that I think, especially when investing in personal development or self-development, and obviously this ties closely to my book, Shit You Don't Learn in College, is so many people have invested heavily in college degrees that did not get them to where they want to go, right? So they've invested years, 4 years, 6 years, 7 years, depending on if you have a master's or a PhD or a doctorate or something. And then they've spent potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars on that same degree, and they end up in a 9 to 5 that they're unhappy with, unfulfilled. Forbes did a recent study that said 87% of all people in 9 to 5s are either unhappy, unfulfilled, stressed, depressed, or just completely disengaged from their work. So nearly 9 out of 10 people. And most of them look back and they're like, I put myself into $100,000 worth of debt to do this. So the lesson they learn, the subconscious programming that they get is I spend money and I get no return from it.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. My parents actually, my mom especially, my oldest sister went to school. She went to a private school, which none of us went to a private school after she went to a private school because we learned, sorry to my older sister, but she initially was
sorry, sis.
Sorry, sis. I'm pretty sure she's got it taken care of now, but it caused her a lot of stress for a long time. But the one good thing was that my mom actually, she was studying psychology. And my mom had to intervene. Like, I don't think she even let her go a full semester where she was just like, you need to do something that is going to give you an immediate return on investment after. And some people don't have that guidance. And of course there could be other things about that. Like, oh, my parents never like let me follow my dreams. But it's like, let's be realistic here. You know, like you're paying 80 grand a year to go to a school or something like that. Like, let's make sure that you make some money at the end.
I think the biggest problem there, and for anybody who's listening to this also, it's not necessarily your fault, right? Or your parents' fault, because it's the way that society is done, right? We're like, hey, Leslie, you're 17 and a half years old. Let's make a decision on how you want to spend the rest of your life.
Oh my gosh.
Right? That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was traveling internationally and just all the people who are, 20, they were so much younger than me and they're in their gap year because they don't know what they want to do yet. And that's built socially into their society. Exactly.
Yeah. But like, not in the US for some reason. Yeah.
I know,
and so
100%.
that's one of the biggest things for me is that alone, if you think about it, 90% of people have now been programmed to think that investing in yourself turns out not to work in the end. And that alone is crippling society.
I totally get that. Okay, here's a real question. So that was amazing. Now, when you were doing this, were you scared as?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, so talk to us about that a little bit. Give us the inside edition. We need to know the feelings.
Yeah, I think, basically how I quit my job. So, kind of a background story for everybody. I used to work at Cisco Systems. I made about $250,000 a year. And the reason I quit was I had a conversation with a mentor of mine, and that mentor basically asked me, he's like, Zander, what would you do if you couldn't fail? This was a little over 5 years ago. And he said, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And I told him, I was like, honestly, like I love mentoring other people ever since I got kicked out of the Air Force. So I was in the Air Force. I was actually going to be a fighter pilot. And then I got kicked out for getting a DUI my senior year. And so I said, honestly, ever since I got kicked out of the Air Force, I've just missed mentoring other people. Like I've missed leading and coaching and mentoring other people. And my mentor at the time, who was a 7-figure earner actually in the health and wellness space. And he said, Zander, just because, or actually he said, well, why don't you do that? And I said, well, I've got this great career. I've got all this momentum. I'm going to be one of the youngest directors in Cisco's recent history. So I had all these excuses, all this BS, right? Mm-hmm. And he goes, Zander, just because you're on a path doesn't mean that you should follow it. And just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you should do it. And he said, Zander, when you get to my age, you'll realize 2 things. Number one, the one resource you can never get back is your time. So that was mic drop number 1. Right. I didn't know that you could do this. You can have multiple mic drops in one conversation.
This guy,
you can. So mic drop number 1.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap. Like the one resource I can never get back is my time. And at this time I'm a 27-year-old kid. And then he goes, and Zander, the second thing is every moment is either on purpose or off purpose. And every moment off purpose is a moment wasted. And I just kind of sat there and was like, holy crap. And he goes, Zander, do you know the difference between you and me? I go, well, yeah, you make a shit ton more money than I do. And he goes, the real difference between you and me is I'm actually pursuing my dreams. And ever since you got kicked out of the Air Force, you're just dreaming one. You're just a scared little kid. And that was mic drop number 2, because society told me that I was okay. And he wasn't going to lie to me anymore. He said, society's bullshitting you. And I care about you too much to let you keep bullshitting yourself. You're not happy. You need to change. And you can't change tomorrow. You have to change today, is basically what he was saying. And as a 27-year-old kid, like I remember that moment vividly. I remember it so vividly. And that was on like a Saturday. And then that next Sunday, the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. And that next Monday, I called up my manager and I quit on the spot. And a lot of people are always like, it's like, you had no idea what you were doing. I had no idea what I was doing. I had about 20K saved up on my bank account. So it wasn't like I had saved up a ton. You guys, I'm a millennial. Like I spent all my money, right? Like at that point, I was spending it on frivolous shit. I was spending it on tequila shots at the bar for everybody, and like just keeping myself happy, filling a void.
Right.
And I remember quitting, and I remember when I quit, there were like 2 key beliefs that I just attached to so strongly. One of them was exactly what I just mentioned. I can never buy back any more time. Nothing else mattered. Time was my most important resource. And I couldn't keep pushing things off. I couldn't keep pretending that it would get better tomorrow, because realistically it won't. Nothing ever gets better tomorrow. It only gets more difficult tomorrow, because you build the habits. You build, like, if you're not moving forward, you're building roots. And every day that you spend not moving forward, you're building deeper roots. So the deeper your roots go, the harder it is to eventually get moving. Yeah. So I always tell people, like, you can't wait for tomorrow. You have to do it today. Absolutely. So that was the first thing. And then the second belief I had, just like you mentioned, was I scared? I was terrified. I was so scared. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of being criticized. I was afraid of failing. I was afraid of everything. I had no idea what I was doing. But the one belief that I had, which is a really weird one, I realized whatever it is that I do, I'm not going to die. Like, this move won't actually kill me. I might feel like it's going to kill me sometimes. I might feel like my heart's about to explode and jump out of my chest and my brain's going to melt, but I'm not actually going to die by doing this, right? Our body, viscerally responds like we're about to be attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. Yes. But we're not actually going to be attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, right?
It's huge what you're saying.
And that's the biggest issue, is like most of us develop these fears. Like think about like what happens, like when I quit, like what was going on. And when I was thinking about quitting, this all happens because your body thinks you're about to be eaten by a saber tooth or a short-nosed bear, right? So what happens is your adrenaline starts to spike, right? Why? So your fight or flight. You can actually fight the saber-toothed tiger or run if you need to. Your palms and your arms start to get sweaty, but it's not a normal sweat. It's like a weird, smelly sweat, because your body's trying to taste bad to the predator. Your neck stiffens and your eyes widen so you can spot the saber-toothed tiger, right? And your blood runs to your arms and your legs so that you can evade if you need to, right? Literally, your body is preparing to fight a saber-toothed tiger. Yeah. But all I'm doing is calling my manager and saying, "Hey, Frank, I'm done." Right? It's actually, like, if you boil it down to the truth of the moment, it's actually not that big of a deal. But society and our brain and our subconscious programming has made it a really big deal. And that was the hardest part, is realizing this is not going to kill me. And then lastly, if it's not going to kill me, I might not know what I'm doing, but I'm not going to quit until I figure it out. And that was it. So if the one resource I can't get back is my time, this isn't going to kill me, and I'm not going to quit until I figure it out, there's really only one outcome, right? Success. I have to succeed at some point. Does that mean it's going to be easy? No. Does that mean it's going to be fast? No. Does it mean that I'm going to enjoy every moment of this process? No. But am I going to get there? Yeah. And when I do get there, I'm going to have all the things that I want, but more importantly, I'm going to become the person I've always wanted to become. And that's really what it was for me. But every moment was terrifying. Even like, we talk about this a lot, right? We have an amazing mastermind with you and several other coaches that are, changing the world, building huge businesses and changing so many lives, right? But like, you still have fears. I still have fears. The difference between someone like you and I and most people is that like, I feel my fears and I don't let those fears control my life. I don't let them dictate my decisions and my actions anymore, because I've realized every time my fears dictate my actions, I end up unhappy. I end up unfulfilled. I end up poorer. I end up like less healthy, worse off in my love life. Like fear is like making decisions from fear. It's not fear itself. Fear is fine. You can have fears. We all have fears. It's making decisions and actions and behaving from that place of fear. That's the big issue for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember when I was working as a nurse, going back to what you're saying about you can't get the time back. And I had discovered coaching and I was so passionate about it. I subscribed to like hundreds of coaches. This was like when coaching first became a thing, like their email list. I was clicking on every link. I was at every webinar. I was fascinated. I couldn't get enough of it. I was just like, and the increased amount of anxiety that I felt in my body going to work day after day was just like, and the way I describe it when I have clients who are transitioning out of their career because they're finding a new passion or whatever, is like your passion is raising and it's that much more of your time wants to be spent doing that, which makes you hate your job even more.
Yeah.
So I want to invite you to look at this anxiety at work increasing as a good thing. Because it's getting you prepared to make your transition and there's less and less space for this other job because you're just so excited about this one thing.
Yeah. It's like if you were stuck in a jail cell with no windows and that's all you knew, right? You're going to be okay in the jail cell, but deep down in your heart, you're going to know that there's something better outside. And what this does, it's like opening up a window in that jail cell and you can finally see outside into nature and people playing in the grass and like having fun and like living their lives and connecting with other people. Like you're going to start to realize, holy crap, I can't stay in this jail cell any longer.
100%. Two things on that. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, if you never open up that window, you'll never see how much more there really is for you.
Absolutely. So I had a walk. I lived very close to the hospital when I was working in the ICU, and it was right by this lake and it was like a beautiful, whatever. So every morning, it's 6:30 in the morning and I'm, walking to the hospital or whatever. And there was this homeless man who was pushing a whole big cart of cans, like that was his job. And I was like, what I would do to have that as my day job.
Oh my God.
Like that was the point. Like I would love to be outside all day.
I would love to be outside and not under fluorescent lights all day.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I would love to be outside all day. On top of that, the more typical one is the person pouring my coffee. I was like, I would love to just be pouring someone's coffee all day today. And then, so it was my last day of work at the hospital after. And so because I had so much anxiety in this, because leaving my job was one of the scariest, most stressful times of my life. It was just the first biggest risk that I would say that I took by myself in my life. And leading up to that, anyway, so I started meditating and I actually got into, and I had a meditation practice twice a day, 20 minutes a day. And I was studying NLP at the time and was apprenticing with this coach doing the hypnosis and all the things. And so every time that I'd come, it'd be like getting coaching on like, how do I leave this job? When do I leave this job? I hate this job. I'm scared of leaving this job. And, got some good guidance from my coach of just like, when the day is the right day, it's going to come or whatever. So I'm meditating one day. And it was like the first time that I ever like downloaded this message that just kind of like, I can't even describe it, but it was like I felt the words and the words were loud, but they weren't actually a voice. It was weird.
Yeah.
But it was just thy will be done. Like, which I would never say to myself. So I know it wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't me. But that was the message. And literally the next day I went into work and put in my notice and whatever and got a lot of backlash. And it wasn't really that pretty, but I stayed strong through the storm. So anyway, fast forward, it's the last day of work after having to go through a month of knowing I was about to be done, but wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm walking past this pond. And I think I might have had music on or something. And I start crying, right? Because it's just like, okay, last day of work. I get into work. I see one of the nurse practitioners on the unit, like, oh, Leslie, it's your last day. How do you feel? And I was like, oh, well, to be honest, I, shed a few tears on the way into work today. And she's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But what I never told her was that those tears were tears of pure bliss and joy.
Yeah.
I felt like I was Jesus bearing the cross
Yeah.
for the last 9 months, maybe up to a year of hating it. And like the amount of growth that I had to go through to like get myself to be brave enough to jump off that cliff was like astounding. So,
Yeah.
and walked out those stairs on my last night of my last shift and was like, I'll never look back again. It was the happiest day of my life. Cracked a bottle of champagne. That was in
Funny,
2015.
mine was tequila.
Okay, there you go.
Opened up a nice bottle of tequila with a buddy of mine and just
I spent Christmas with my family. Like they were like, you're going to leave us like right at the holiday season. I was like, I can't imagine staying one more day. And you better well know that I'm going to be with my family this year for the holidays after years of never being able to be a nurse. So anyway, that story. But the point being like the anxiety of that just being absolutely tremendous and like having to bear, that storm and just kind of stay. So I was going to ask you, because we kind of are starting to touch on this, but just like, what are the tools that you use to support yourself? Because one thing I'll say before we get into that, we talked about meditation, obviously, but with the mastermind group, we work on our goals that we have and things that, we're really focusing on. Because now that people are like, okay, food isn't really the main culprit here. Once they get into the program, it's like, oh, it's these other aspects of life and how I'm dealing with relationships or emotions or whatever. Let's focus on what it is that I truly care about. And then the food takes care of itself in the wake.
Yeah.
So getting people present to the fact that on your way to reaching your North Star, hitting your goals, you're going to have your day-to-day muck that comes up and the 95 donkeys pulling you the other direction as you're going towards it. And when you're not staying present to where that North Star is for you and your goal, then all you can focus on are the donkeys and you like hate the ride along the way.
Yeah.
So what are the tools that you use to both like keep that there, keep those at bay? What's that look like?
That's a great question. And, the first thing that comes to me is the importance of understanding that, you kind of mentioned like, there's, you're going to have to put some work into getting to this thing. Right. But then there's people that turn that work into struggle, and then the whole thing doesn't become fun. Right. So life is about growth. Right. If you were to ask me the purpose of life, there's, some people might say the purpose of life is to love. Some people might say the purpose is to serve others. The purpose is to live on purpose. There's a lot of things that like people will say the purpose of life is. I've done a lot of meditating on this over the years, and I will tell you, the purpose of life is to grow. Right? It's to grow in every aspect, to grow in love, to grow in your ability to serve others, to grow in living more purposefully every day, to grow in your spirituality, to grow in all of these different aspects, right? That is the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to grow. Now, what is growth? Growth is very uncomfortable. Growth hurts, right? If you think about going to the gym, if you want to grow bigger muscles, you have to put tension on those muscles. If you want to become a stronger person emotionally, you have to push yourself emotionally. If you want to become a stronger person mentally, you have to push yourself mentally, right? So growth itself is a very strenuous process. Now, the big problem is most people think that stress is actually a bad thing, right? So for anybody who's not familiar, Dr. Kelly McGonigal did a TED Talk in like 2015 where she debunked the myth that stress kills. Stress does not kill, actually. What Dr. Kelly McGonigal found, they did a study of about 60,000 people. They asked them, do you live a high stress lifestyle? Then they asked them, do you think that stress is bad for you? And then 8 years later, they checked who died, basically. And what they found was if you lived a high stress lifestyle, you're 43% more likely to die, only if you believe stress is bad for you. if you believe that stress is good for you because stress creates growth, right? You're actually 9% less likely to die than the control, than people who didn't have a stressful lifestyle. So stress actually doesn't kill you. Stress actually makes you live longer, because stress is important to living purposefully. Stress is important to growth in all these different areas. So, the first thing that I would tell everybody is it's really important to understand that for you to have all these things, for you to accomplish all these things, you cannot be afraid to push yourself, right? You cannot be afraid to stretch yourself. And just like you mentioned, it creates this dissonance. When you get that vision of where you're trying to get to, well, like we were talking about in your 9 to 5, you're like, I want this thing, but I'm in this thing. That's creating cognitive dissonance. That's creating physiological stress on your body to the point where you're so uncomfortable, you can no longer sit in your current reality. You have to take action. You have to do something different, and you have to bring that vision into reality. So the first thing that I have to tell everybody is like, don't be afraid to work a little bit hard. But that being said, like the 7 dwarfs always said, whistle while you work, right? Like enjoy the work, learn to love the process. Leslie, you've known me for a couple of years now. I bet you can say that I'm probably one of the hardest working people, at least that I know. That being said, I love working. I've built a belief around how much I love to work, because when I work, I do it with amazing people. I do it doing something that I love, and I have an amazing impact, and I serve so many people. The harder I work, the more people that I get to impact. So, if I had this belief that like, oh, work is hard, like I just want to sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day, right? Then I probably wouldn't accomplish all these things that I want to accomplish. But if I have this belief, like, putting in my time and my care and my energy to serve others and grow this mission and build this mission, I'm never going to be short of fulfillment. I'm never going to be short of happiness. I'm never going to be short of finances, because I'm willing to do the work and I've learned to love the process. So a couple of the tools that I think are massively, massively important for that. Visualization is number one. Like I tell people all the time, if I got rid of all the shit in our programs, all the tactical strategy skills, like all the nitty gritty details that we taught, and the only thing that I taught was how to properly visualize in a way that creates cognitive dissonance and pulls you into action, that would be enough for people to see results. Because the truth is, when you can create such a clear vision of your reality in your mind's eye, such a clear vision of where you're heading, and you can attach your desire, your drive to that, stoke the fire in your heart. A lot of people are like, dude, Zander, how are you such a driven person? I'm like, I'm not, I'm lazy as shit. I'm so lazy, but I'm also really, really good at stoking the fire in my heart. Right. And I do that by visualizing every single day, multiple times a day, about where I'm heading, the lives I want to change, the relationship I want to have with my wife, the health, how I want to feel when I wake up every morning, my mobility, my strength, all of these things, right? My energy levels. I literally visualize that every day, multiple times a day. And because I do that, all the actions that I take align with those visions. From the moment that I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, it's probably not all of them, but it's pretty close, because I've been doing this so long that visualization of the person I want to be, the life I want to live, the husband I want to be, the eventual dad that I want to be to our kids, the inspiration I want to be to my clients and my followers. When I create that vision over and over again, the images that we imagine in our mind, our brain doesn't know the difference between reality and a vividly imagined reality. So the more I imagine myself as that, the more I actually become that person.
Love it. So pause for 1 second,
Yes.
because you've definitely spoken on how you visualize and teach us that and all the things. So let's break it down for a second with
Sure.
the exact way that you visualize. So I know you have a meditation practice. I think the most recent was longer on weekends and maybe a little less on weekdays now, which I can relate to, except lately I've been getting back into the 20 minutes twice a day thing, which is feeling good. But anyway, so because I was just visualizing meditating before you and I got on today. And so would you say it's like, is it a feeling first? Do you go out into the future first? Are you seeing pictures? It like feeling pictures? How exactly is this happening for you?
So I'll tell you that let's go to the second most important thing, because for your visualizations to work, you have to do this second thing. Because, if you're listening to this, maybe you've tried visualizing before, maybe you haven't. I can guarantee, I don't care what level you're at. This has happened to you before. If you've ever tried to visualize, you try to visualize where you want to go. And in your head, the monkey brain starts to go, oh, but you're not good enough for that. Or, oh, you can't do that. Or, but you can't even figure this out. Or, and so your intellect starts to get in the way of your imagination, just trying to go sit in this beautiful future that you're trying to create. So to get to what you're talking about, the other half of the equation that I always tell people you have to do before you visualize is something that I call fear journaling, or we've now started to coin the term the emotional dump or emotional clearing. Yes. Right. So one of the things you're highly aware of, Leslie, is our emotions are meant to move through us. Right. And that's scientifically the only way to move through an emotion is to actually move through the emotion. There's literally centuries of studies on this stuff. Like, you can't change that stuff. It's psychology. But most people don't want to feel their negative emotions. They don't want to feel the crappy stuff. So what ends up happening is, let's say you have a doubt or a thought or a fear that's triggered by some past programming. Okay. Because you have a past programming, and so you start to push for more. And just like we were talking about, let's say when I was quitting my job, what were some of the thoughts and fears that came up? Oh, there's no way I'm going to be able to figure this out. What if I can't make money? What if I can't figure out what it is I actually want to do? What if people judge me? And what if eventually I have to I can't afford rent. Like, I can't afford my car payment. Like, my friends aren't going to think that I'm cool anymore. All the different, what if I have to move out? Like, am I going to be homeless? All the weird thoughts that come up. Right. And so, if you have all these fears and thoughts and negative beliefs that are just subconscious programs that get triggered when you go do something different, and then you go try and visualize on top of that, you have this big pile of shit that you're trying to gold plate. Well, it's still a big pile of shit, even if it's gold plated. So we have to clear out the crap first. And so what we tell everybody, and this is very contrary to most self-development practices, is we tell you to go sit in the crap. We tell you to literally go grab a journal. And I did this, my best friend committed suicide 4.5 years ago. And this was one of the only things that got me through it, was every day journaling out the deepest, darkest emotional feelings that I possibly could. Now, this is terrifying for a lot of people because it's not fun and it's not comfortable to go, when your best friend has just committed suicide and you're a coach that has done a lot of deep psychosomatic work, you can imagine the beliefs that I created. Right. First of all, I was heartbroken because this was, AJ was like a brother to me. I knew him since I was 8 years old. So I was heartbroken that my brother just committed suicide. On top of that, I resented him. I hated him for taking himself from our lives, from my life, from his family's life. What a selfish dick. Right. And then I would notice that I was resenting him, and I'd be like, oh my God, I am such a terrible person because I'm resenting someone who was so demonized that he felt the only way out was to kill himself. So now I'm resentful. I'm heartbroken that I'm resentful, that I'm feeling guilty about resenting him. And now I'm noticing that I'm guilty, resentful, and heartbroken. And I'm like, holy shit, here I am, a coach. I'm supposed to be helping other people. Yes. Now I'm ashamed if anybody notices how crappy my emotional foundation is. Absolutely. So I'm feeling all of these negative emotions, right? Yeah. And most people would identify with this. They go, oh my God, I'm not good enough. Like, I'm feeling all these negative things. No, everybody feels this stuff, right? Your feelings, your emotions are not you. You are not, I am not resentment. I am not guilt. I am not anger. It's a feeling that's coming up. And my goal is to have to move through it. So what I would do is I'd literally journal this stuff out. I would have journals filled with, I fucking hate you, you selfish bastard, to my dead best friend. Which is terrifying for a lot of people. But every time I did one of those journals, 20 minutes of bawling my eyes out, and I would feel a massive weight off my shoulders. Yes. And I would stand up and I would be able to go get some shit done. People think that inspiration and motivation is, opposite fear and resentment and anger. But the reality is you have to go through fear. You have to go through anger. You have to go through guilt to get to inspiration and drive and motivation. And so that's why this, this fear journaling is so important. We talk about it in my book, Shit You Don't Learn in College, but it might be the most groundbreaking thing that we teach our clients is to actually go sit in the negative emotions.
Yes.
And then, some people are like, but Zander, like law of attraction, if I focus
I can't think anything negative.
I can't think anything negative. Positive thinking is what
happen.
Exactly.
Yes.
And my response is, okay, let's go back to the 95% of your subconscious mind. Well, if 5% is your conscious brain, let's say I'm feeling guilty and resentful. And I go, screw that. I don't want to feel guilty and resentful. Take that, guilt and resentment. Get out of here. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, that's 5% of my brain turning off guilt and resentment. Where does it go? If I haven't moved through it, where does it go? It goes down into that 95%. And now it's programming those 95 donkeys.
That's right. Yes.
And it's marinating in that 95%. You want to talk about how the law of attraction works? It's not the 5% that makes the difference. It's the 95% that's in your subconscious that's really putting out the energy. And if you haven't moved through your crap, that comes first. So you could be consciously thinking about, I want to make, all this money and I want to have perfect love life and I want to be fit and healthy. But in your subconscious, you're afraid, you're angry, you're doubtful, and you haven't faced those negative emotions. You will continue to bring that into your life, period.
Absolutely.
End of statement.
And it's going to create very poor health outcomes, not
100%.
just gaining weight, but this is where cancer happens. That's where you create
chronic. That's where you create chronic health,
chronic pain.
Exactly.
In neurolinguistic programming, like the pain paradigm, it's the awareness that the chronic pain is there because there's so many emotions that you are not acknowledging.
Yep.
And so our work as the practitioners is to be like, what do you feel now? Guilt, shame, hurt, anger, like keep going. And then like getting to a point. And sometimes it's like, now who's the anger out? It's like, I'm mad at my dad. Pain's gone. Like you have to acknowledge where it's coming from and absolutely everything you're saying. Like we have clients, that's the number one thing is that people are running away from feeling their pain.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, if people just the way that most of us see it, but it's everywhere.
And if people just realized like all you had to do was, and I always give the example of like the 7-year-old kid who falls on their bike and scrapes their knee, right? If you've ever seen a 7-year-old kid fall on their bike and scrape their knee, if they try to hold back tears, it's for like 30 minutes. Right. Yes. And you're like, oh my God, just let it out. You're making this so hard on me. Right. Just let it out. And if that same kid were to just cry 30 seconds.
Yes.
30 seconds later, they're bouncing off the walls. Well, and they're having fun. They're inspired. They're laughing. They're back on their bike riding again. Right. They're not afraid. But the reality is we're all 7-year-old kids at heart. Absolutely. Our brain still responds the same way. And most of us are walking through life like for months, years, decades, when all we really need to do is just go sit for 20 minutes. And this is terrifying for a lot of people, 20 minutes and just yell it out or cry it out or write it out and feel the anger, feel the guilt, feel the frustration, but just sit in it and don't be afraid to sit in it because the only way through an emotion is to actually feel the emotion. And I will promise you, as you sit in an emotion, you will actually feel it dissipate. And on the other side, you will feel lighter, you will feel freer, you will feel driven, inspired, motivated, you will feel all of those things. So, to the visualization point,
yes,
that's actually probably the most important piece. Because you have to get the doubts and the negativity out of the way before you can properly visualize. Right. Now, the next thing that I do, so once you've done that, then you can actually get in the visualization and you will find once you've cleared yourself and you feel that state of freedom, that lightness, you're actually going to be putting yourself into more of a theta brainwave state, and you're going to connect with your vision a lot more strongly and a lot more emotionally. So you kind of asked me like what I visualize, how I go through that process. The depth of transformation comes from two things. It comes from repetition and the depth of the emotion, right? So, if you think about it like a stone breaker hammering a stone, right? You'll be hammering a stone. Now, if I'm hammering that stone at like a 1 level of strength, like it might take 10,000 blows. And then on the 10,000th blow, that thing's going to crack open, right? But if I were to hammer that thing on a 10 level of strength, I'm not going to see anything, but then on the 1,000th blow, boom, that thing's going to crack open completely. Well, visualization in your mindset is the same way. You're going to put in some work, right? And if you're putting in work regularly, you're going to feel like you're putting in the work and you're not seeing the results. Well, it's the same thing. You got to keep doing it for an extended period of time. And all of a sudden you're going to have this shift and you'll be like, whoa, what's going on? Right. But to that point, for you to really make the change happen. There has to be repetition. You're going to have to do it consistently over and over. But the deeper the emotional charge, the more you can work on having a deep emotional connection to the visualization, that's going to be what really creates the subconscious grooves. Our brain is programmed by two things. Number one, repetition. Number two, emotion. So the more we can do it, and the more we can do it with a deep emotional charge, the better. Now, are there going to be days that you visualize and you're just not feeling it? Yeah, of course. But the problem is when you go, oh, I'm not feeling it, that means this isn't working. No, make the decision that you're going to work on making it emotionally charged again. This is what we were talking about. It takes work. It takes effort. If you think that it's just going to happen automatically, you're dead wrong, right? Because the reality is everybody wants success. Most people aren't willing to do what it takes to actually be successful. Put a little bit of work, put a little bit of energy, put a little bit of intention into it, and focus on changing. Focusing on change is hard for a lot of people. That's why most people say, I'm not going to do this. I would rather just, stay where I'm at. Well, life's going to be hard, guys. Being unhealthy is hard. Being broke is hard. Being single and not having someone that you love is hard, right?
Yes.
So is working hard to have financial freedom. So is working hard to have the health and the mindset around health that you truly deserve. So is, having that relationship. Like, just because you find a partner doesn't mean you're going to stop working on it, right? The reason that Maddie and I never have a fear of us breaking up or getting divorced in the future is because both of us are so willing to constantly put in the work, right? And so the reality is you can either pick the hard of being broke, unhealthy, mentally unhealthy, and solo, or you can pick the hard of putting in the work and having everything that you ever desire.
Absolutely. I kind of look at our program as being like the gym for your emotions and for your mind, because it's like we're not, being accountable to doing that on our own. So you're literally
gym.
It's the more important gym. Yeah. Say more on that. It's the more important gym because
it's funny because like obviously I'm a gym nut and I love going to the gym and I love feeling good and I love being energized and having mobility and having strength. I love it. Right. But why do I love it? Because the way it makes me feel here, the way it makes me feel here and my ability to express myself, it doesn't hinder my mind and it doesn't hinder my heart and my soul. Right. So for me, my body is just, it's important for me to go to the gym, but why? So that I never hinder myself mentally, energetically, or my soul in any way, shape, or form. That's my goal. That's why I go to the gym.
Absolutely. Yep. And then the emotional gym being just as important to make it all happen. It's all going to come together. Yep. We had a conversation recently about feeding all aspects, like sometimes you might be financially, hungry or have a craving. It's like, okay, look at your bank account, do your finances, right? Some days you might need social feeding and it's like, okay, great. Let's have a cocktail with our friends. Like all of it together equals that full comprehensive health. So absolutely awesome. Okay, cool. So awesome conversation. So, okay. So we talked about how you can actually, use the tools to make the anxiety better, keeping the North Star, going through all those different types of things. So, and then you get that result. I don't even think that there's anything else to say about that. Just rinse and repeat over and over again. The one thing I wanted to ask was,
I would say the one other thing that I would say is, probably one of the most important things, and you obviously get this, is get support.
Yeah, right.
Because it is, whatever the goal is, whatever the journey is, our environment does dictate our destiny. This is why I will never be without a mentor. I will never be without a coach, and I'll never be without a mastermind. And I'm sure you're the same way, having seen the benefits of it. But, I always tell people our environment dictates our destiny. If you hang out with six smokers, you're going to become the seventh. If you hang out with six people who are unhealthy and their emotional attachment to things is unhealthy, you're going to become the seventh. So you need to be around people that are working on themselves. You need to have a mentor that can help see your blind spots, because you're never going to be able to read the label from outside the bottle.
100%. I always say you have to ask for help. You got to do the hard work. You got to make a change. Like I never could have been where I am today without having a coach and the accountability. We're just not wired to be able to do this by ourselves. And there's no shame about that.
Yep.
I didn't get all the details before you go. I know you have to about the visualization. So you're there, you're visualizing, you've cleared out all the fears and now you're there. And are you like thinking like, okay, first I want to visualize about my future with my wife. or my future with my future children or my business? Like, are you thinking that first? And then is it a feeling or is it a picture? What's happening in Xander's mind
Are you
and
saying for
body?
me or for people in
Yeah, for
general?
you, for you.
For me specifically, I always kind of start with an image of myself and
Uh-huh.
what it looks like. And for me right now, it's me and Maddie, and we've got a future 2 kids, and just the freedom and the alignment that we feel. And then I kind of bring it back to like what it would mean to me, how much we're making in the business, seeing myself on stage in front of 200-300 of our clients.
Mhm.
um, the things that I'm doing, how much I'm able to donate to our causes we want to donate to, like Shelter to Soldier, all of those things. And as I'm running through those things, I'm really focusing on feeling what it would feel like when I'm on stage, what it would feel like when I'm, on the beach hanging out with Maddie and our 2 kids, what it would feel like investing into the different investments we want to invest in with our income, what all those things would feel like. And I really focus on feeling it, like we talked about, because it's repetition and emotion. The feeling is the most important part.
So good. Thank you. Thank you. Dare Yourself to
Yeah.
Dream used to be a name of my previous mastermind. You're already an amazing dad to all of your clients, whether you see yourself that way or not. And you're going to
I
be a
appreciate
fantastic
that.
dad to your future children. And everybody wishes they could have had a dad like Xander, which is why he wrote Shit You Don't Learn in College. So please tell us the best way that we can buy your book and
Yeah,
follow you.
you can check it out on Amazon, #1 bestseller on Amazon, or you can check it out at sydlicbook.com, SYDLIC book.com. We're giving away about $3,000 worth of programs and training, a lot of subconscious stuff. So you can go to sydlicbook.com or grab it on Amazon.
Awesome. Xander, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all your wisdom.
Of
Appreciate you.
course. Thanks for having me, Leslie.